Hey guys, now I do see that we got some new questions right over here, so I'm ready to answer them. Are you? Yes, welcome back to Q&A with AniMat. And I am really happy to see that when it came to the first episode of Q&A with AniMat, it was actually very well received. People who watched it really did enjoy it, and the best part is that they also came in to interact and also ask themselves some questions so that hopefully I could probably answer them right over here. So from those questions that I got from the comments of that video, I went and picked out 10 of the best and the most interesting questions to go and answer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get things started and look into our first question, which is going to be from Rudy Animations. And Rudy asked, "Hey AniMat, what is your worst cinema experience?" This is in terms of the people in the room, as a lot of people talk about the film too, but that still counts either way. Now, it's actually pretty interesting about this question, because the thing is, a lot of people would probably think that I would go and list off watching a bad movie, you know, like some people would think that my worst cinematic experience would involve Norm of the North or the Emoji Movie or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 or anything like that. But it's not necessarily that. I mean, technically, yes, it does count as a bad cinema experience, but that's just because of the movie itself, and I was just there to do my job to go and review the movie, and that's pretty much it. So that doesn't necessarily count. And interestingly enough, I never really had a bad experience where it involves the audience, where they would be a little too rowdy, or they would talk too much, or I would be too distracted by someone texting or munching on their food too much. Like, I've never really had that kind of experience. I mean, maybe I've had some where the kids wouldn't shut up, but that's the furthest extent that I've had when it comes to people. But the real worst cinema experience that I've had, funny enough, it's actually related to technical issues. And those ones are the more fascinating stories that I actually do had, because there are a couple of them that I can talk about that really were some weird experiences that I've had in the cinema. Like, there was this one time when I was watching, it was either Despicable Me 2 or it was Minions, but I know it was a movie where the Minions are actually involved, and it was either one of those. And I remember, like, the movie was playing fine, and it was completely over, and right when the credits start playing, that's when the entire cinema had a power outage. Or I think it was just in my theater specifically that it had that power outage, but I remember the credits were starting to play, and then suddenly, poof, it's gone. It was like blank screen and everything, and the employees were telling us, okay, we gotta get out, there seems to be some technical issues, so we pretty much had to leave from there. I mean, we saw the movie, so it was pretty much over. And there was also another technical difficulty story that I do have, and I think it was actually with Turbo, where I remember we were watching it, and it was right in the middle of the film, or it was somewhere in the first half, where suddenly, for 20 minutes long, the movie was silent. Like, we do see the visuals of what's going on, but there was no audio whatsoever. And the problem got so bad that one of the employees had to go up into the room where all the projectors are, and they had to actually rewind the whole thing to where the audio started to cut off. So technically, we would actually go and see that part twice. And yeah, it really was that bad. But I mean, these issues really were once in a blue moon, but they were the kind of stories that, and these were the moments that, you know, they were really fascinating to happen, and they do make unique memories in terms of cinema experiences. So I would say my worst cinema experiences would be related to some technical issues with what's going on in the cinema in general. Okay, so our next question that we got here is going to be coming from Nicholas Zande STVS TDP ever since 2001. And Nicholas asked, what are your thoughts on the Emoji Movie winning Worst Picture at the Razzies? Now, I just want to start things off by saying that there was a time when I used to care about the Razzies, when I always find it so fascinating to see who would be nominated for Worst Actor or Worst Actress or Worst Writing or Worst Picture. But nowadays, as I grew older and as I grew wiser, I realized that the Razzies are a complete waste of time and they really don't matter whatsoever. Because my problem with the Razzies is that, ironically enough, they don't take themselves kind of seriously. And I know, I mean, like, technically the Razzies in general are just all for gags and they're all just for laughs and stuff like that. But what I mean is that they don't actually go and hunt down the movies that would actually be considered the worst of the worst. If you may notice and you look into the nominations that they always go for, you'll notice that there is a bit of a pattern, and they always go for the same big franchises. Like, they always go for the Transformers movies, they always go after Twilight, they always go after the 50 Shades of Grey films. Like, they always go for those kinds of films. Like, the movies that are really, really popular and often have a strong hate base. And the Emoji Movie was definitely one of the most hated movies of 2017. And I still stand by that it is definitely the most hated animated feature of all time. And after seeing the film, it's definitely with some good reasons as well. But the thing is that it really just goes down into a popularity contest. Like, another thing that makes the Razzie Awards completely illegitimate is that the audience would have to go and vote. And we don't necessarily have, like, a real panel of judges or a real panel of film experts that would go and pick which ones are actually of the worst. It's actually with the fans, it's with the audience, that they're the ones that have to go and pick which ones would be the worst of the worst. And for me, I feel like award shows where people in general would actually go, like the public would go and choose which ones are the best or which ones deserves awards, they do not necessarily count. This is also why, I'm going to say it right now, I really don't give a crap about the Kids' Choice Awards. Like, there are times that some people would actually go and comment to me that they're freaking out about some stuff that happened at the Kids' Choice Awards, and I remember, like, the Emoji Movie got a nomination, or how Hotel Transylvania 2 actually won over Inside Out, but if anything, they really don't matter, and they really don't count, and I feel very thankful that I don't watch the show itself, because I would see a few clips or a few snapshots of what's happening in there, and honestly, the best way to describe it is just disgusting, honestly. It's just, good God, it's like kind of pathetic the way that they're trying to make it so trendy and try to make it so cool and hip with the young audience of, like, between 6 to up to 11, you know? It kind of makes Hotel Transylvania look timeless. But with that said, though, I really don't care about the Razzie Awards anymore. Like, if it were something like 8 years ago, or if this happened during my teen years, I would have probably freaked out that for the first time ever we do see an animated feature win Worst Picture at the Razzies, but nowadays, I just don't care, and it really is kind of meaningless to me. And I mean, sure, yeah, technically the Emoji Movie does deserve to have an award for being, like, the worst of the worst among movies and animation, but when it comes to the Razzies, I really just don't care. Okay, so our next question here is from Minecraft Magic 28, and Minecraft asks, have you ever seen a film in IMAX, and how was the experience? Well, interesting. We actually got another movie experience question, and also just asking me about just the experience of watching a film in theaters. A little bit of a coincidence there. No, but seriously though, yes, I have been in IMAX a few times, and it really is great. And although it is a little bit rare, because I would usually go into my local cinema, and technically it doesn't necessarily have an IMAX, but it is kind of more your standard cinema. But when it comes to IMAX, it really is an upgrade. And as I'm recording this, it actually was not too long ago that I actually went to an IMAX to go see a movie. because I went to go see Incredibles 2 at an IMAX, and it really was quite a fascinating experience. And I think the first thing to mention is actually the way that they distribute the seats in theaters, because there are ways that it could be kind of annoying where, like, when you're in a full house and sometimes, like, you're just sitting there and you see, like, a whole bunch of audiences and you're, like, some of it is kind of blocked because you just see a few heads right in front of you when you just want to watch the movie in its entirety. But with IMAX, like, they're a lot more slanted, so you won't be distracted by any heads, so it gives you a good perspective of the whole movie itself. And I would say that the most recognizable thing that I would notice that is a big difference when watching an IMAX movie is actually hearing it. It's actually with the sound, because as I've mentioned before, I've seen Incredibles 2 in an IMAX, and what I've noticed that is a major difference than just watching it in theaters is especially the times when you see Jack floating around in different dimensions, when you see him suddenly sporadically going into another dimension or another, and you see characters like Bob, Dash, and Violet just walking around the house trying to find Jack. And what's really cool about it is that you actually hear Jack all around you. Like, you can hear Jack floating behind and, like, on top of your head and stuff like that. It actually was really cool, and it really was something that helped enhance the movie watching experience. And actually, there is another example of that I do remember from my childhood. I remember when I was a kid, I went to go see Fantasia 2000 in IMAX, and that was another really cool experience. And I remember the scene in particular where you have Mickey, who's preparing the entire scene for Pomp and Circumstance and asking characters like Donald and Daisy to know if they're ready. And you see Mickey just scattering everywhere. Like, while the host is talking, you hear Mickey just all around the theater, just trying to talk to the people to get ready and stuff like that. It was a bit of a comical experience, but it definitely was a lot of fun, and it gives you that feeling that you can only get in theme parks, and it was actually really cool. So yeah, like, going to IMAX to watch a movie, it definitely is an upgraded experience than to just watch it in theaters. So it definitely was a lot of fun. Okay, so our next question is going to be from Kyle Andrade. I think that's how you say his name. I'll just say Kyle Andrade. And Kyle actually has the big question: why do you hate Sony? Oh boy. Now, this is something that a lot of people would often ask me, and sometimes they would be curious about. And the thing for me, it's actually in terms of two aspects: the way that they would make their movies and the way that they would run their business. Now, in terms of the way that they would make their films, I mean, there's no secret that I am not a fan of the way that they would go and create their animated features and how they try to make it a little more cartoony than others. And when it comes to those films like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania and the Emoji Movie, sometimes it can be a little too overbearing. Like, they try a little too hard to be cartoony. And they focus on that so much. What makes it so infuriating, what makes it so frustrating to watch, is that a lot of times they use that as an excuse, because there's no hiding that with many of these Sony movies, they don't have good writing in them. Like, in terms of the story and how they build their characters, it really is kind of low quality there. And when it comes to their animation, they try to make it so over the top, so cartoony, so wacky. Like, they try to fill in with so much fast-paced slapstick comedy and rubber hose animation that it really does become a bit distracting, and it really does become something that you start to realize that they're doing this as an excuse for the bad writing. They think that, okay, we'll make it as over-the-top and cartoony as possible, thinking that audiences will completely forget about the bad writing and the bad story and bad characters and stuff like that, when really it just doesn't work. And it really does show that with many of their films, they really do try to be desperate. They're desperate for people to have a laugh. They're desperate to have audiences to be entertained, and they're so desperate to be so cool and hip with the modern kids, especially like when you watch something like Smurfs or Hotel Transylvania or the Emoji Movie, that they try so hard to be cool and hip that they end up making themselves look really, really dated, which is why many of their films nowadays, or practically all their movies, they don't have a strong legacy in the long run. They all end up in the $5 bargain bin at Walmart. And in terms of their businesses, the way that they would run their company, I mean, it has been reported before that things are not always grand at Sony Animation. Like, you actually go and do your research behind the scenes of what's actually been going on, other than what Sony Animation is trying to make you think of what's happening behind the scenes, is that it really is kind of depressing, and it really is kind of a place where you can tell that a lot of these animators are just not having fun. It really is kind of like bottom of the barrel in terms of working there. Like, you could tell it's the kind of place that is kind of like an entry gate to go into the animation industry, like kind of like a portfolio filler, so you can actually go into the actual places that are fun to do. And you could tell how they are so mismanaged that they just have no idea what they're doing in terms of running their business, which is why I would often question if there often would be a point for them to actually go and continue having an animation studio. There are times when it does feel like Sony Pictures is better off without Sony Pictures Animation. It does feel that sometimes, because the way that they run their business and the way that they would make their films, it's just honestly not worth it. And honestly, I know there are a lot of people that are countering that, and they would want to say, like, I saw a lot of people saying, like, they hate Illumination Entertainment more than Sony Animation, but you gotta give Illumination some credit. Like, even though, sure, they don't make great movies, they don't make some of the best animated films in recent years, but with the way that they run their business, they are far more successful than any other non-Disney animation studio. You cannot say that Illumination is the worst animation studio out there when they are making some of the most successful animated features of the decade, especially when two of them have already crossed $1 billion at the box office. So really, that's kind of the big issue with Sony Animation. It's just that they're not that good as a studio. They don't know how to make their movies, and they don't know how to run their business. And honestly, even though I do like some of their films, well, like, very few of their films, actually. Like, I really do enjoy Surf's Up. That was actually one that was legitimately good. And as I'm recording this, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has yet to be released, but I am actually pretty optimistic. It actually does look good, and it does look like something that's not going to be any of their dumb, cartoony, animated films or something like that. But honestly, that's kind of my thing against Sony. It's just, I really do feel like they are the bottom of the barrel when it comes to major animation studios. And unless they change their ways and they give up making cartoony animated features and they go into the direction a little bit like what Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is going to be, then maybe there is a way that they could redeem themselves. But for now, they're just known as the crappy studio that made the Emoji Movie. Okay, so our next question is going to be coming from Cameron con Limon. And Cameron asks, hello AniMat, have you ever considered getting a job at an animation studio, either local or abroad? If so, which one would you like to work with the most? Well, that's actually pretty interesting, because I did try at one point to see if I can get into the animation industry or try to apply to go into a university into animation, and honestly, that did not work out as well. Like, I tried applying a few times, and I did get I did get some rejections. So that's mostly why I stayed working on YouTube, making these videos and stuff like that, and to go and keep me going. However, even though I'm not interested anymore in trying to work as an animator or something like that, I am a lot more interested and a lot more passionate to go and work as a voice actor. That is something that I am seriously pursuing to go. And so far, like, I am just starting, of course, but in terms of the question, like, which studio I would like to work with the most, well, as a voice actor, of course, it would be more than an honor if I could go into, like, Disney or Pixar. That would actually be amazing, but for now, I would like to go and try to get my voiceover career off the ground so I can actually go and try to appear in, like, maybe animated series or animated features, or like one major goal I would like to do is theme park rides. Like, that's kind of like my dream, to be a voice actor for theme park rides, especially for Disney. That would be incredible, but that's kind of like the big thing. So technically I am trying to get into the animation industry, but not necessarily as an animator, but as a voice actor. So hopefully that will work out. Okay, so our next question is going to be from Rocker Mike 1, and Mike asks, what card series do you collect religiously, Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon? Well, I actually used to do both. Not anymore, but there was a time when I would collect both Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Pokemon cards. Like, when I was a little kid, my biggest goal was actually to go and collect all 151 Pokemon as trading cards, and I would always go and buy some of the first packs, and I would go get cards like crazy to see which ones that I could get. Some of them I do get as shiny, some of them I would go get common, and I used to stack them up all the time, and I remember, like, I think I managed to get them all. Well, not necessarily get all of them per se. I don't think I've ever gotten the Mew one. In fact, what I would do sometimes is that I would just go and substitute that with the movie cards. Like, I remember back when like the first Pokemon movies were released in theaters, they would often hand out some of the trading cards as kind of a bonus. Like, I remember I had the Mewtwo card, and I remember I used to watch a lot of Pokemon the Movie 2000, and I would collect a handful of ancient Mew cards. I remember I used to do that a whole bunch of times, and that ancient Mew card used to be kind of my substitute for having a legitimate Mew card. Like, I knew Mew existed, but that was the only one that I could get in my hands. And as for Yu-Gi-Oh, I used to be someone who was a little bit competitive. Not entirely, but I would often play Yu-Gi-Oh, where every week I would hang out at my local card shop, and I would enter into tournaments, and I would constantly buy packs and just play Yu-Gi-Oh. Admittedly, I wasn't all that great. I was mostly someone that once in a blue moon, I would be able to go into the top 8. And, like, a lot of the people there, like, they used to be, like, really serious players. Like, some of them that would actually go to nationals and stuff like that. But I wasn't all that great, but I ultimately decided to quit because I realized that nowadays just playing Yu-Gi-Oh would get way too expensive, and you would spend thousands of dollars every month just so that you could stay within the current format that's always changing with the ban list. And honestly, with the new cards that they would invent, it just makes it a little more ridiculous to play. Like, I remember, I think I quit when they announced that they would do the pendulum cards, and those cards were absolutely ridiculous, and they make the game a bit unplayable and kind of stupid that they would create new strategies so that you can try to go and beat your player in just 2 turns and that's it. It was honestly getting a little bit ridiculous, and nowadays I don't feel like I could go back to Yu-Gi-Oh anymore because things have absolutely changed, because I saw that they introduced the new Link cards, and I'm just there going, what the fridge are these things? I mean, seriously, what is this? Like, what are these Link cards? And before I would go to the next question, I will say, yes, I did actually have a Toon deck, and I tried my best to make it competitive, but I didn't really succeed up to that point. But I did collect a lot of them, like the Toon World cards, the Toon Monster cards, and of course, getting like some of the more recent ones like Toon Kingdom and Mimicat and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there was a time I used to collect those cards, but not anymore. At the most, if I would collect them, it's mainly because I would get a lot of them from what's in the box. Now, our next question is going to be from Max Mantel, and he asks, what is your opinion on Disney live-action remakes? Well, I mean, there's no real secret that I'm not that big of a fan, but admittedly, they're not necessarily the worst movies. I mean, for me, I just feel like overall, they really are pointless. Like, when you look at something like the 2015 Cinderella film, or Maleficent, or the 2017 Beauty and the Beast, there really is no purpose necessarily for them to actually go and exist other than for Disney to go and get some extra cash. And especially what I find to be very fascinating is that nobody cares about them in the long run. Even if they are major box office hits, nobody really cares about them, or nobody really thinks about them like in the long run, like after 1 year and stuff like that. People would just go back into thinking about the animated features, like the classics that they're based on. Even Disney is actually doing that. Like, right after that movie would be released, they would not give a single crap, and they would just go back to the classics. And the best example of that is actually with Beauty and the Beast. Because when you think about the 2017 film, like, it was a massive hit. It made $1.2 billion at the box office. But interestingly enough, like, right afterwards, like a year later, or even like a little less than a year later, people would completely forget about it. People would not give a single care about that film, and everybody just goes back thinking about the animated feature, because that's the one that actually created its own legacy, while that one is just meant to cash in on the animated feature. Because when you think about it, the animated films are the ones that really did put all the hard work and all the effort to make it such a timeless classic. The live-action remakes, on the other hand, all they have to do is just copy a little bit of what the animated film has done and just try to go and profit off of the nostalgia and the success that those movies actually have nowadays. And really, there's just no point to having them. Now, of course, there are some good things that can come out of them, and of course, they would present some potential. Like, Angelina Jolie as Maleficent, in concept, that's actually a really good idea. And especially when you think about a movie like the 2016 Jungle Book, that one was actually really good. That one is the closest thing so far to be on par with the animated feature. And keep in mind, I'm doing this in 2018. This is before we have the giant boom in 2019 with all those live-action remakes with stuff like Dumbo, Aladdin, and The Lion King, and all that kind of stuff. But for now, I really do feel like there's just no point, and I think Disney is just going through a little bit of a phase. I remember somebody on Twitter actually mentioned that the best way to describe these live-action remakes is that they're pretty much the modern version of the direct-to-video sequels, because the only purpose that they do have is just try to cash in on the success of the original films, and that's kind of the point of them. So really, they're just pointless overall. Now, our next question that we have right over here is actually going to be coming from Jason Fleming, and Jason asks, why do you like to wear that orange hat? I guess wear he meant by W-E-A-R. Well, the thing is, with the orange fedora, nowadays, it's kind of like an icon, like kind of the most recognizable thing from my videos. Like, when people would think about a reviewer, and sometimes they would think about their costumes and stuff like that, there are some specific things that people would remember. Rather it be like the angry video game nerd looking like your stereotypical nerd with all the pens in the pockets and the white shirt and stuff like that. And then you also got the nostalgia critic who has the black baseball cap and then puts on like this professional suit and red tie over a white shirt. And then there is me, where I decided to go a little bit more unique and a little bit more all out, where I would have my orange fedora, and let's be honest, who else on the internet is wearing an orange fedora, and also with the dragon shirt and the dragon shirt and like a blue t-shirt behind it. So more, like, the thing with the orange hat is that it really is a key part of the AniMat identity. So that's kind of the big thing with the orange fedora, is that this pretty much says that it is AniMat. I mean, interestingly enough, a lot more people will recognize the orange fedora more than just my face without the orange fedora. So basically the big thing is that this makes AniMat more than anything. Okay, so our next question that we have here is going to be coming from Charlene Cernigal, and Charlene asks, "Hey AniMat, are you a fan of Sonic as in the cartoon series, the games, or comics? And if you are, what is your favorite out of the ones I just mentioned? And also, who is your favorite Sonic character?" Well, the funny thing with Sonic, I wouldn't say that I'm a huge Sonic fan, but I would say I'm a little more of a casual Sonic fan. If anything, I haven't read any of the comics, and honestly, the only TV show that I would watch as a kid related to Sonic, I remember watching some of Sonic X, but it's not necessarily my favorite of the animes or even in the Sonic series. And I remember one show that I used to always watch as a kid, funny enough, is Sonic Underground. And I remember I would used to have this ball of Sonic Underground that I would always play with. So that's kind of my memory there. Like, my most fondest memory of Sonic Underground is actually a ball, more so than anything in the series. Well, actually, not necessarily, because I will admit the theme song is actually really cool. That, and also, in terms of the games that I would play, I remember I would hang out with my cousins, and sometimes they would actually have a Sonic the Hedgehog game, whether it be the first one or the second one. Sometimes I would play that from time to time. But in terms of the ones that I do have, the one that I played with the most would actually be, what was it? Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I mean, that was something that I would have fun with as a kid, and sometimes when I would have family or friends over, we would always play like 2 players, and that's always fun. And also, I would remember to go and connect it to the Game Boy Advance, because if you also had Sonic Advance, then you can have some bonuses in the Chow Garden, which I don't think I fully understood how that mechanic works, but like, it was just some kind of little fun time waster to do. But I remember that was kind of a fun game. Like, there are some aspects in the gameplay, they are a lot of fun, but nowadays when you do like look at it in terms of like the story and the cinematic ways and how they execute it technically, it is a bit of a joke in a sense, especially when their dialogue would always overlap each other. That's always funny. And in terms of my favorite Sonic characters, I don't know if I really have any specific, like, major Sonic characters that I really do like. I guess Knuckles would count. Like, I really do like Knuckles. He is pretty cool. And also, I would go with Rouge the Bat, because let's just say that I have 2 big reasons as to why I would pick Rouge as one of my favorites. Okay, so now we have our final question, which is going to be from Amelia Jones. And Amelia asks, is there going to be a chance for Disney to release the Black Cauldron in its uncut form? Well, if I could be very honest with you, the thing is with the Black Cauldron, I'm even doubting if they would ever release the Black Cauldron, period. Because as of right now, as of 2018, the last time that Disney has ever released the Black Cauldron on home media was back in 2010 with the 25th anniversary DVD. In fact, I actually do have it right here. Like, this is the latest version that we got of the Black Cauldron, and that's pretty much it. There was nothing else that we got from it. There is no new version. There has even yet to be a Blu-ray release. And I even question if Disney would ever do that. Like, I'm even doubting if Disney would actually do so for their Disney Movies Club. Like, kind of do an exclusive Blu-ray release of that. Like, maybe they will, but I would highly doubt it. And even nowadays, considering that Disney would have more bad memories of the Black Cauldron than actual good ones, considering that it was a box office flop, the thing with the Black Cauldron is that I would highly doubt it if Disney has even kept the entire uncut edition, because when Jeffrey Katzenberg was the new head of Disney Animation, he would come in and just like snip things up in the Black Cauldron, like really screwing things over. So honestly, it would surprise me if Disney actually did keep any of the original things of the Black Cauldron that Jeffrey Katzenberg cut out. But I will say that for now, when it comes to the Black Cauldron, I don't know if they would even have a new release of the Black Cauldron, period, let alone an uncut version of it. So I know it does sound a little bit disappointing to hear that, but honestly, I'm just expressing my opinion on what Disney is doing with their home media releases, and yeah, I don't see Black Cauldron in the near future that would possibly have a Blu-ray release. Like, the only positive thing that I would say is just that Black Cauldron would have a better chance of getting a Blu-ray release than Song of the South. But then again, that's really not saying much. And that is pretty much it with the Q&A for this round, so I just want to go and thank everybody who has asked me a question, and also if you guys have a question that you would like to ask me and hopefully get into the next Q&A with AniMat, then all you have to do is just go ahead, ask me a question. If it is interesting enough, if it's crazy enough, you know, if it is really good enough, then maybe I will go and pick it out and ask it and answer that question. So with all that said, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes!